Hello, I hope you're all doing well. Today I will be talking to you about Cate Price's paper, and her paper is called Tolstoy Among the Philosophers, an exploration of the soul in Anna Karenina. In her paper, Cate claims that the suffering we see of the characters in the book is caused by deficiencies in the characters' souls. In her paper, she particularly examines the characters of Kareninin, Anna, Vronsky, and Levin. And she notably says that Levin is the only one of these who has a happy ending. So Cate begins by talking about what an orderly soul is. And this is really important because if we're going to talk about deficiencies in a soul, then first we need to talk about what an orderly soul is. So she draws on 3 different philosophers for her definitions, and she draws on the philosopher of Plato, Augustine, and Lewis. So first of all, she talks about Plato, and she talks about how Plato divides the soul into 3 distinct parts, which are the reason, the spirit, and the appetite, which correspond to the head, the chest, and the stomach, respectively. Cate says that Plato claims that a rightly ordered soul is one where the head rules the stomach through the chest. Cate then goes on to talk about Augustine and his definition of what a rightly ordered soul looks like. And he pulls on some from Plato, but what Augustine eventually ends up claiming is that a soul must love God more than they love God's creation. So that's what Cate draws from, is that a soul must love God more than God's creation in order to be rightly ordered. Her third and final philosopher that she draws on is Lewis, and she says that Lewis says that man is reason, spirit, and appetite, and in order for man to have a rightly ordered soul, all 3 of these must be in harmony. So now that we have our definition of a soul or a rightly ordered soul, what a soul should look like from Plato, Augustine, and Lewis, Cate goes on to talk about different characters in the story and the way that they have deficiencies which cause their suffering. She begins by talking about Kareninin. She pulls some of her Greek skills and talks about how the name Kareninin means head, which already is indicating to us that Kareninin may have a little bit too much reason involved. And we see this a whole lot in the story because Kareninin really responds to Anna and Vronsky's situation with a lot of just cold rationality, I guess. And he's just very reasonable, and he's like, well, these are reasonable steps you need to take. And so Cate talks about that. She talks about how he does briefly touch on some emotion when he forgives Anna, but then he ends up turning away from this and reasoning away from it, and that causes a lot of his pain. Cate goes on to talk about Anna and Vronsky and how they are ruled by the appetite. So Kareninin was ruled by the head and reason, and Anna later is ruled by the appetite. This causes Anna to have a split. To quote Cate, she says, Anna's soul is disordered, leading to chaos within herself. Anna's turning away towards her appetite causes her to have a very disordered soul and causes her a ton of pain and suffering, both her and Vronsky. Cate also talks about how Anna and Vronsky lack chest or lack courage because they don't cut themselves off from society. They keep going back, which causes them a lot more unnecessary pain as well. And eventually all of this leads to Anna's death. The final character that Cate talks about is Levin. And she talks about how Levin seems pretty well ordered, but also something seems to be missing. And it's harder, Cate said it was a lot harder to identify this one because there doesn't seem to be anything at first really missing. But Cate ends up writing that Levin is overthinking, but when he stops overthinking, there's an objective truth in him that he sees. Unlike Anna, he eventually moves on and finds this objective truth, and he has his moment of conversion, which leads to him having a completely rightly ordered soul. So one example that she gives of Levin stopping this overthinking is one we've talked about before, which is the mowing. And when he's mowing and he stops thinking about it, he's able to do it better, and he has this sense of peace. And Cate talks about how that is him seeing the objective truth and finding that peace as he stops thinking. She also talks about how he was loving the wrong things because he was putting his family and his farm before God. And so when he has his conversion at the end, he is able to put things in the right order, which is what she talked about with Augustine at the beginning. And he's able to put God in front of his farm and his family, and therefore have more satisfaction in his farm and his family by directing his life towards God. And therefore he's able to have his happy ending, which is why, since he's the only one who is able to move on from that, his override his appetite and override his reason and hold them in harmony, he's able to have his happy ending. So to sum up, I'm going to just read part of Cate's conclusion that I thought was excellent, and so I will read these last few lines. Thus we can see that when reason alone governs the soul, the person becomes dissatisfied with the answers reason gives it. When the appetite controls the soul, the person is never satisfied when his desires are fulfilled. Rather, he is driven to ruin. When the head governs the stomach through the chest and the person's love is directed towards God, his desires are fulfilled and he finds a joyful peace. So yes, that's Cate's paper. Thank you for listening and have a lovely day. I hope to see you guys again one day. Cheers.